Jennifer Fulford was a devoted wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. She was born in Texas and moved to Florida with her husband Robert in 1987. She had 2 children, Hannah and Zachary, and 2 grandchildren, Oliver and Violet. She loved her family more than anything and enjoyed spending time with them. She was also active in her church and community, volunteering for various causes and organizations. She had a passion for gardening, cooking, reading, and traveling. Jennifer worked as a nanny and house manager for Reed Berman, a businessman and philanthropist, and his family. She had been with them for 7 years and was considered part of the family. She took care of their son, who had special needs, and their daughter, who was in college. She also managed their household, running errands, paying bills, and overseeing contractors. She was loyal, reliable, and trustworthy. She had a warm and cheerful personality and a positive attitude. She was respected and loved by everyone who knew her. On the other side of the story, Scott Nelson, a homeless ex-convict who had a grudge against his probation officer. He wanted to get revenge on him by robbing a wealthy family and fleeing the state. He chose a random home to rob, and unluckily, it was the house of Reed Berman, a businessman who employed Jennifer Fulford as a nanny and house manager. And Jennifer, being a kind and caring woman who loved her job and her family, had no idea that her life was in danger when she opened the door to Nelson on September 27, 2017. Jennifer was alone in the house. Nelson knocked at the door. After Jennifer opened the door, Nelson forced his way into the house and started to threaten Jennifer while he was holding a knife. He stated that he'd rob her and go away. And poor Jennifer, scared of her life, started to get away and escape the house while she was screaming and crying. Nelson tied up Jennifer with zip ties and duct tape. He searched the house for valuables and found Jennifer's car keys, bank card, and PIN. He put Jennifer in the trunk of her car and drove to an ATM. He withdrew $300 from her account and then drove while taking her with him. A day passed, and Jennifer's employer, Reed Berman, became worried when he realized that Jennifer had not picked up his son from school. He called her phone and found it in her purse, along with her wallet and tablet. All 3 of them were at home. He also noticed that her car was missing. He contacted the police and reported her missing. The police traced the ATM transactions and found an unknown person's image on the surveillance cameras. They found Jennifer's car in the hotel parking lot with bloodstains and fingerprints. They issued a statewide alert for Nelson and his description. The police used a helicopter and K-9 units to search for Jennifer in the area where her car was found. They also interviewed witnesses and neighbors who might have seen or heard anything suspicious. 3 days after the kidnapping and never-ending extensive search efforts, the investigators found Jennifer's body in a wooded area. They identified her by her dental records and jewelry. They also found the zip ties, duct tape, and knife that the killer used. The medical examiner confirmed that Jennifer died from stab wounds and asphyxia. She also had bruises and abrasions on her body. Soon, the police and the media announced the discovery of Jennifer's body and the identity of her killer, who was Scott Nelson, a homeless ex-convict. Jennifer's family and friends were devastated by the news. A loving, generous, and cheerful person who touched many lives. Her family demanded justice for her murder. On October 1, 2017, the police arrested Nelson in Jacksonville, Florida. He was staying at a motel and had a backpack with him. He admitted to killing Jennifer Fulford and said he did it because his probation officer treated him badly. He said he had no remorse and that Jennifer Fulford was just collateral damage. He also said he wanted to die and hoped to get the death penalty. He was charged with multiple crimes and taken to jail. He pleaded not guilty and claimed he was insane. He also said he wanted to represent himself in court, but the judge denied his request and appointed public defenders for him. He said that he stabbed Jennifer several times in the chest and back, piercing her heart. He covered her face with duct tape and left her to die. He then drove to a hotel and changed his clothes. He tried to withdraw more money from another ATM, but failed. Then he left the car in the hotel parking lot, took a bus to Jacksonville, and escaped. While police caught him by his dental records, and his DNA was found everywhere he went. On June 28, 2019, Nelson's trial began. The prosecution presented evidence and witnesses that proved Nelson's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. They showed the surveillance videos, the blood and DNA tests, the autopsy report, and the confession. They also showed the impact of the crime on Jennifer's family and the community. They argued that Nelson planned and executed the murder with cold-blooded malice, and that he deserved the death penalty. The defense tried to portray Nelson as a mentally ill and traumatized person who acted impulsively and irrationally. They said he had a history of abuse, addiction, and mental illness. They asked the jury to spare his life and give him a chance for rehabilitation. Nelson took the stand and testified in his defense. He repeated his confession and his blame on his probation officer. He called Jennifer a dog and said he killed her because she was in his way. He showed no emotion or empathy for his victim or her family. He said he was happy with his life and that he wanted to die. He also insulted the judge, the jury, and the lawyers. He said he did not care about the verdict and that he would appeal it anyway. He stated he was smarter than everyone in the courtroom and that he knew the law better than anyone. He said he was the victim of a corrupt system and that he had nothing to lose. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours and found Nelson guilty of all charges. They also recommended the death penalty for him. The judge scheduled the sentencing hearing for July 11, 2019. Nelson smiled and said he was satisfied with the verdict. He said he was looking forward to his execution and that he hoped it would be painful. He said he had no regrets and that he would do it again if he had the chance. He said he was not afraid of death and that he believed in God. He said he hoped to see Jennifer in heaven and ask her for forgiveness. On July 11, 2019, the judge sentenced Nelson to life in prison without parole. Judge said he agreed with the jury's recommendation of giving him the death penalty, but he decided to spare Nelson's life because of his mental health issues and his lack of criminal history. Judge wanted to give Nelson a chance to reflect on his actions and to suffer the consequences of his crime. He said he hoped Nelson would find some peace and redemption in prison. He also said he wanted to avoid a lengthy and costly appeal process that would prolong the agony of Jennifer's family and the public. He said he respected Jennifer's life and dignity and that he wanted to honor her memory. The judge hoped the sentence would bring some closure and healing to her family and the community. Nelson reacted to the sentence with anger and disappointment. He said he was betrayed by the judge and the jury. He said he wanted to die and that he hated life, and he would rather be executed than spend the rest of his life in prison. He felt no remorse, and he still blamed his probation officer for his crime. He said he would never forgive or apologize to anyone and would continue to fight for his rights and his freedom. He said he was not guilty, that he was the victim of a conspiracy, that he had nothing to fear, and that he would never give up. Nelson said that he would see Jennifer in heaven and that he would kill her again. Her family was devastated by her loss. They had to cope with the grief, the trauma, and the injustice of her death. They missed her presence, her love, and her support. They struggled to move on with their lives without her. Jennifer's employer, Reed Berman, and his family were also deeply affected by her death. They considered her a part of their family and trusted her with their home and their children. They lost a loyal, reliable, and caring employee and friend. They felt guilty, angry, and helpless for not being able to protect her or prevent her death. Please consider subscribing to the channel and wait for the next video. While you can watch another case that pops up on the screen,